How you doing there? This is Bernard West, My Perfect Life. Just remind you, I'm from a family of 16. I have 15 brothers and sisters. Let me start again from um, when I was real young. My father, they still have these ice cream trucks that come in the neighborhood, and my father used to tell us when the ice cream truck rang the bell when it was coming in the neighborhood that it was out of ice cream. So we'd be, 4 or 5 years old. Say, oh, they're out of ice cream again. So every time the ice cream truck came through the neighborhood, they were always out of ice cream. It was like a nightmare. Um, and so also, here's what my father used to do. We had a dog, a black dog named Queenie. Okay, female dog named Queenie. And sometimes Queenie would bark, and sometimes Queenie would bite us. Sometimes Queenie would poop in the house. It was like a nightmare. We didn't know what was going on sometimes with Queenie. And what we found out later on after we started growing up, because one day my sister Diane, she was a year older than me, she looked at Queenie, she looked under Queenie, and she said, I thought Queenie was a girl dog. And come to find out, Daddy did not want to spend the money to take the dog to the vet, so he'd take it to the pound, have it put to sleep, and get another black dog. And we were so young, we didn't pay attention to that. And so we wound up having about four different Queenies because Dad used to have them killed because he didn't want to spend the darn money. And also, my mom, she never wanted to beat us. She used to say, "Wait till your dad gets home. Wait till your dad gets home." And she used to take in when he comes home. She'd say, "This one, this one, this one, this one," and we'd have to get in line. He'd take his belt out and he'd whack us and whack us, you know. But Diane never got a beating. Now remember, I have to tell you that my dad had favorites, and he used to treat him to stuff, take him for drives, and do all kinds of stuff. I was not a favorite. I have to say that. So anyhow, he had favorites, and so Diane, every time it was time for her to get a beating, she'd run up in her room. Now we always used to listen to see whether she was getting beat or not, and we never heard her screaming or hollering. So we always thought, hey, she was a favorite. And years later, we found out what the story was. Diane used to run up in her room and pull a Bible out and sit on her bed and act like she was reading the Bible. Can you believe that? And Dad would come in, he would look at her for a minute or two, and then leave her alone. And we should have known at that point Diane was the smartest one in the whole family. And to prove that, she went on and got her bachelor's degree. She got her master's degree, and she was only a couple credits from getting her PhD before she died. So we ought to realize that that was a pretty slick thing to go up and read the Bible to keep from getting beat up. Now, another thing, remember, when you're in a family that big, you're not living, in the suburbs in a nice neighborhood. You're living in the hood. Some people won't call it nowadays, but it was the ghetto. And during Halloween time, the amazing thing during Halloween time is you get a bag and you walk from door to door. In those days, we didn't have any, Halloween bags. We used a pillowcase. And you go from door to door and, you get your candy. Well, in the ghetto, you only go maybe half a block and then you go back home, drop the candy off. You go another half a block, go back home, drop the candy off. And you do that during the whole trick or treating process. And people who were new in the neighborhood didn't understand that process. But the process was then done that way because the big kids who were 14, 15, and 16 used to snatch your bags. They'd run down the street and grab your bags. And that's what happened. That was the deal. And that's how you grew up. And to be honest with you, when I turned 14 or about that age, well, maybe I was a big kid. I may have even done it when I was 13. But I used to snatch bags too. So I really feel bad about that now. But that's what we did in those days. And you weren't smart enough to understand that you have to only do a half a block at a time or you'll lose your candy. Now, my mother used to have a thing called living on the dash when she was mad at you. You're living on the dash. And we never knew what that was. And she was dead for years, and my father had been passed away for years. And we were sitting around, a bunch of us. Carol, one of my older sisters, was there, Iris, I think, and Geraldine, and I think Bobby, and we were sitting around. And somebody brought up the dash thing. And Carol said, nobody knows what Mom was talking about, living on the dash. And we said, no, what the heck was she talking about? He says, well, go out to a cemetery, and you see the day a person was born, a dash, and the day they died. And she's saying, whatever you do, whether you're kind, evil, mean, loving, that's the dash that you're living on. And that's all you get, because the only thing left for you now is to die. And so when she's saying you're living on the dash, she's trying to say, make it a good thing, because that's the deal. Now, one of the things about when we first moved, when my mother left my father, and we moved to Philadelphia from Washington, D.C., 701 Shepherd Street, which I went back to visit a couple times. We moved before we got oil heat, we had a coal heat, but it didn't matter. You had to, put the ashes out with Abby. And since we didn't have a lot of money, Mom used to make me on Thursday night before they picked up the coal on Friday to go through the ashes, and if any coal looked like it wasn't totally burned, I'd throw it back in the bin, to keep from wasting money. But that wasn't the big problem with my mom. My mom would not let us turn on the heat until she saw smoke coming out of our mouth. I mean, smoke of the coal. We'd be getting into November, early December. We walking around freezing. We got coats on. Mom, turn on the heat, please. Can we turn on the heat? And she said, nope, it's not cold enough. And my sister used to even drink hot water and try to blow the smoke in her face to see if smoke could come out. I mean, I used to put gloves on my feet. I couldn't get out of the bed in the morning. It was so darn cold by hitting my cold feet on the floor. So I used to wear socks and gloves sometimes when I went to bed. And then sometimes it'd be like in the middle of December, and she'd say, okay, time to go put on the heat. But we'd be walking around doing this, for a long time, because she would not turn that heat on. Now, one thing I want to mention, what I hope to do is every time I do one of these, I'm going to tell a joke, okay? So don't think it's part of my life or it's real. Then the jokes may be anything, or some of them are a little racy, some of them are not. I'm hoping that you think most of them are funny. But anyhow, another thing that Mom did when I was 6 years old, and I'd still have the policy, she bought a $500 life insurance policy from Metropolitan Life. Now, the funny thing about this policy is that it was called a debit policy in those days, that once a month, or maybe every other 2 weeks, a man would come by and collect the money at your house. Now, there was a black insurance company called North Carolina Mutual that used to do the same thing, but she brought hers from Metropolitan Life. It was called a debit, where they come in and they get the cash. And I think my policy was like 30 cents a month or something like that. But here's the thing. One day, I don't know, I mean, I was an adult then, but I decided to read this policy. Now, the policy had been long canceled. And so I said, let me read it. And I looked under the one called disability. And I mean, this just threw me a loop. I had to underline it. Here's what, to get the disability $500. You had to lose like the right hand and the left foot, or the left hand and the right foot, or you had to lose both of the feet, or one whole leg and 4 fingers on the left hand. I'm going, what the heck? How does Metropolitan Life, I guess they just do that for people that lived in the hood, but I never seen a disability policy where you had to lose a combination of things before you collect. So I could just see my dad seeing me with one foot going, sorry, son, but I got to cut off the left hand to get this $500. Now, I'm grown, I'm married, and I asked my wife, if I die, will you get married again? And she goes, yeah, I'd get married again. Oh, okay. Would you let him live in our house? Well, it won't be our house. It'll be me and my new husband's house. I said, okay. Okay, I got it. I said, well, are you going to sleep in the same bed we sleep in, that we slept in? Yeah, he's my husband, Bernard. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? And are you going to have sex in that bed too? She said, yes. Bernard, please. Why are you asking these questions? I said, well, all right, one last question then, and I won't bother you anymore. Are you going to let him drive my car? And she said, no, because he doesn't know how to drive a stick.